Informative, educational, objective, inclusive, comprehensive. This is Progress Report. Updates and conversations from the Government Information Service.
Good day and welcome to another episode of Progress Report, updates and conversations from the Government Information Service. My name is Ivan Khanna, my lovely co-host Gleneva Hodge, and we have with us today a man that I've known practically all my life. I'm going to get that out of the way now. I call him Teacher Bren. But in his capacity now, he's the Chief Education Officer.
Correct.
He has served as the director at Youth and Culture.
Correct. Yeah.
He's been a teacher at the Road Primary School.
Secondary school.
Secondary school. He has a number of accolades. He studied abroad. He is quite the epitome of education, if you ask me. All I've known him all my life is in education and caring and dealing with children.
Right.
But we're here today to talk about education on a number of fronts, a number of angles, Gleneva. And I'm going to let you really take the lead on a lot of this today because, to be entirely honest, I am still a little bit taken back, if I want to say that, by the statistics that were shared about the situation in our schools where mental health is concerned. And even a precursor before we got on air, we were having that conversation again. And we are going to talk about this in depth in the next two episodes. Yeah. After this one, we're going to spend some time talking about mental health where our children are concerned. Where the situation in our school is concerned, it's alarming. It's something that we have to arrest now, and it needs all hands on deck. And it will bring a charge to all of us as Anguillians to be introspective in how we look at where we're at as a country. Our youth really need us. That's all I'm going to say on that. But we need to jump into education.
Yeah, so we're going to get into all of those topics. Mr. Romney, thank you for being here. Welcome to Progress Report. Before we even get into the heavy stuff and the mental health stuff, as Ivan said, this is something that we are going to look at over the next couple of episodes. Okay. Let's start with the Education Development Plan, 2020 to 2025, I think it is. This was recently approved,
Correct.
Addressed at EXCO. What can you tell us about it? What does the Education Development Plan say? What does it do?
Okay. All right. Let me thank you all for inviting me on Progress Report. I do look forward to the episodes, and they're very informative.
Thank you.
And thank you all for the work you're doing in bringing out what we do behind the scenes to the public sphere. It's very important that the public is informed and empowered with the information that you share. So we do appreciate that.
Appreciate you being here.
Thank you. The Education Development Plan is a sectoral plan. It's been in the works now for a little over a year. It involves consultations with various sectors, with various sectors, and also different layers or levels in the education system. It embodies our assessment as to where we're at, where education is concerned, and the path forward for the next up to 2025. It highlights key priorities, and I think what the COVID pandemic has taught us is that we need to be more aggressive with our integration of technology in the teaching and learning process, and that's a priority area in this plan.
That's good to know.
It also showed us that we need to focus more on the delivery of the teaching and learning, how we interact with students, how they engage, how we present content and develop concepts. That's a key priority for this plan going forward. The Minister of Education has already announced that she's launching 3 task force to further study 3 areas within education: curriculum review and development, leadership and teacher appraisal, or so forth, and The final one is on methodology, pedagogy, how we teach, how we deliver within the classrooms. So the plan is also developed around those 3 areas. To inform those 3 areas, those task forces will be launched shortly, and they will have a period of 6 months to work. Right? So what I will do is encourage the Anguillan public. The plan is very detailed. It's an easy read. I say that the last time I said that, someone said to me, Mr. Romney, that's a long read. But for something as significant as education,
Yeah, you might want to read it.
you
right?
might want to read it.
And where can we find this plan?
Right, the plan was just approved just last week, I think it was. Correct. Yeah, last week. So it will be made available usually on the government website, and the public will have full access to it. In the interim, if anyone would like a copy, they can get that from the Department of Education or the Ministry of Education. But we do, as we usually do, make it fully available and accessible to the public. But I do encourage persons, because it look at education by sector. So it outlines our plans, our policies and initiatives for the pre-primary sector, which is critical. That's our foundation, and we do need to strengthen and build it. The primary sector, secondary sector, it looks at TVET, technical education. It also looks at tertiary education, ACC. So it covers education from the time you enter the system straight onto tertiary level. And I think it's worth a read, a review by the public. So take the time. Don't roll back, it's a little bit lengthy. Take the time, and it's important, because especially if you have a child within the system, we need to have an understanding as to where the ministry and department's thinking is with regards to the development of education. And you might have ideas yourself to add to those ideas that you want to share with us.
If I can add just quickly, now that you're saying that, I remember recently, I think it was the ECCB governor, something I shared on my Facebook page, he alluded to the fact that, he's seen too much reliance placed on passing CAPE and CXC.
On the academic.
And the academics.
I saw that as well.
Yes.
Is this something that the plan considers?
Yes,
Okay.
it does.
Okay.
Because more and more what we are recognizing in education is that we need to transition to a more competency-based type system, where we focus more on skills developed and the ability of students to demonstrate that. And that's what the ECCB governor, that's the point he was making.
Right.
We are seeing from our industrial partners that the traditional mode of education, although it has its place, is not the only way of us attaining the outcomes we want within our education system.
That is
if
true.
we truly want to reach every child, irrespective to their abilities, irrespective to where they're at, we need to be critical in how we look at education.
It would be remiss of me if I didn't say that I'm happy that you're looking at the technical aspect. Before my daughter could say Jesus, because she used to struggle with her J's, she could have go in her phone and just flip and do what she wants.
Right.
And the children are white. They're born with a chip. I don't care what nobody says. They're born with a chip.
Yeah, and when you speak about the technical side, I like that there's also a greater emphasis and focus on the technology and
Yes.
integrating technology. I mean, I am going to just leave it there, but I had my own experiences with, the school system and technology and how it was embraced prior to COVID. Looking at different systems within Anguilla, comparing, and I'll say this, comparing both the public system versus the private system and the way how they were able to integrate, because it wasn't just, they didn't wait until COVID. It was a everyday thing in the way that it's integrated. And I'm very much aware that there are a number of factors that will affect and make certain things possible. But I'm also aware that there were a number of donations, and if you don't mind speaking to that, Mr. Romney, a number of donations of devices to the schools, to the public libraries recently. How is access to devices within the public school system now? Where do we stand now as opposed to where we were prior to the beginning of the pandemic?
Right. We're in a much better position now prior to coming out from March 2020.
Okay.
We found ourselves in the pandemic. We've had a number of generous donors. The government of Anguilla, for example, and too often we focus on our donors, but we don't pay attention to what the government is doing. Since it's a government information system program, let me start with what the government did. The government responded very quickly by providing devices to ensure teachers were equipped to deliver for us.
That's good.
We were very grateful for UNICEF. The government provided 75 devices in April 2020. UNICEF provided at the same time 100 devices for us to distribute to the most needy of students. Government followed up in 2021 with an additional 50 devices. ECCB followed up with devices for all teachers at the Valor Primary School. And that amounted to another, I think it was 30-something devices. And what that allowed us to do is to redistribute devices that they had recently to other teachers as well. And in addition to that, we are about to procure about 200 devices because of the kind contribution of APALI, Angola Initiative, and the Schultz Family Foundation. It was a challenge grant. They raised $70,000 US, and we're in the process of finalizing the purchase of 200 devices for students.
Nice.
And I'm also pleased to announce, and I shouldn't be announcing this here.
We like
We like exclusive.
We've been working with the Angola Initiative organization since March of 2020 on an entire sector development ICT plan. There's a formal announcement of that on June 17th, right, at the Aurelia Kelly Primary School auditorium. So I'm going to leave that for that. But what I will say with where that plan is concerned, it envisions the full integration of technology into the classroom, and we have donors on board for that plan, and the amount of their donation will be announced then. But I'll give you an overview so the public can get excited as we are excited about it.
I'm getting goosebumps getting excited about it as you speak.
It will be piloted at OKPS. We are talking about devices for all students at OKPS. Devices for all teachers at OKPS, Promethean smart boards in classrooms, smart TVs in smaller teaching spaces, full Wi-Fi access across the campus that could accommodate that type of infrastructure, and so forth. So it's quite a donation.
So one of the things I often try to do is provide an opportunity for clarification, because sometimes we take the sweet and we the sour.
Right.
And sometimes we take out of things what we want.
Correct.
So can you shed any light as into why OKPS was selected as opposed to another school? Is it scope? Is it class size? Is what went into the decision?
It's a variety of factors. The physical campus was one. And the current state and condition of the physical campus. It also calls for upgrades, right, to electricity, data distribution, the whole works.
Right.
That was one. We wanted that initial investment done.
The
size of the school, the number of students and teachers was also a factor. Some of the initiatives that they had already begun. Right, and to address the challenges that they had. So there were a number of things that went into selecting the pilot school. All right, and it's a fair question, right? But what I want to say to all other schools, and I've said this before because we announced it internally with the department, is that the project is not an OKPS project. It's a national project where you're just piloting it for 1 year. To see how it goes before we roll it out to the other schools. And we've done that in other projects as well, where we selected specific schools because of our criteria to pilot something before it was rolled out to the entire system.
Of course, I mean you should take those steps. Right. Yeah, we're not opposed to that at all. You're gonna get that.
No. I know.
Right.
But I know.
You have to say that for the audience.
It's a legitimate question for the public. I understand. That's fine. That's not a problem. But we are excited about it because we have the framework in place with this project to fully integrate technology in a real way across the sector, right? And we have donors who are willing to work with us. So
that's really
exciting.
It is always exciting to hear when members of the community and corporate partners are willing to come in and their civic engagement and to give back to the community and to ensure, because education is the bedrock of any society.
Correct.
If we put into education, at the end of the day, these students are going to become employers and business owners and entrepreneurs at some point.
Correct.
Parents.
Very important.
Parents. Yes, but in order to be productive members of society,
That's it, just basic.
we expect that the level of education, the type of education that they're receiving,
Yeah.
is one that is applicable to the type of world that they're living in.
Yes.
Correct.
And so I'm really excited to hear about this. I'm excited to hear, about these advancements. I do have to ask. I'm hearing a lot of primary school. Where are we when we come to the secondary level education? The rollout, and I'll say I don't have much experience with the secondary level education here, other than as a parent, I should say,
Yeah,
as a parent. And it's been too long since I was there for me to make any comparisons.
Why did you have,
Why
did you have to go there?
If it was long for you, what was it for me?
So why did she have to go there? Like,
Because the world that we live in has changed so much since I was there.
understand,
And so
but
that
I did
is
not
why.
need an age check today. I'm just saying, I did not. I checked myself earlier when I started calling him Teacher Brent because that was an age check for me. So imagine for him. No, you're gonna mess. Man.
It's a humble boy. We're gonna be good. But where are we in terms of secondary education in Anguilla, the integration of technology, and just overall? And this will kind of lead us into the next part that we're gonna get into.
Yeah, we have good news on that front as well. As you're aware, we are currently finishing up the construction of the new secondary school. And that entire campus was constructed for today and for another 50 years into the future, right? The very design, the very facilities, the very the way technology is integrated into the plans and accommodated for is exceptional. If we had what we have right now at our new site at every other school, we'll be in heaven in terms of where we're at. Now, we do have it at some primary schools with the new builds. So, Adrian T. Hazel, the new section of OKPS, the new school, Morris Vanderpool Primary. And we do have that level of integration already, the infrastructure at least in place. But the new secondary school will also come outfitted with some of the stuff that we are literally doing now at OKPS.
So I had the pleasure of actually going there and walking and taking some pictures, and you can find them on the government's page. It's massive.
It's massive. There's no question about that.
No, so hold on.
I've heard people complain that it's too big.
First of all, I don't know how government gonna pay to clean it, much as do anything else. But it's massive.
Yes.
So are we saying then that this might go a little way, but are we saying that we expect growth in our children population? Or are we saying that it's going to be used for a bit much more than that? Night school, for example, and what's the overall plan? Because it's massive.
It's massive. One of the things that we need to recognize, and I had a conversation with a group of persons in the community the other day on this very same matter, discussing the size of the school. I am not a builder, contractor, or architect. So I can't account for the overarching size. But I can account for the facilities that are in there.
Yeah.
And we've done something with that new structure that we were unable to do when we built the current structure, was to fully accommodate all our technical vocational areas.
Okay.
Right? In the way they should be accommodated.
Okay, so there's no separation anymore, is what you're saying. So we won't have that site. It's not at Crocus Hill anymore. We won't. TVET and stuff will be incorporated there, is what you're saying.
Right, but the TVET block is not complete. Is not built as yet.
Okay.
Right, but we do have some technical areas that have already been constructed. Like home economics, those areas, and so forth. We have an IT block for the.
I think you guys built for COVID because the classroom size. Nobody have a problem with social distancing. I'm not even joking.
Right. That's what I'm saying. We've built. There's a lot of thought went into the planning process to ensure we get a campus that's fit for purpose and that can take us forward, because it's a significant investment.
I want you to repeat that, because then somebody probably still thinking that we just build for building's sake.
No. You cannot visit that facility and think we're just building for building's sake. No, a lot of thought went into the planning process to ensure the building is fit for purpose. The classroom sizes, the ventilation, simple things like ventilation. the facilities, because we're offering a comprehensive education package to our country. We need to
I wonder if we
ensure
have time to touch on that.
we need to ensure we have the technical labs, the support
Right.
labs, the teaching classrooms, and all the associated facilities, student support services, SEN.
Long gone are the days where somebody gonna have class under a tree, like literally.
Right.
Because that happened to me in high school.
we had
Like we
classes
didn't have
under the
access.
shed. We had
We had
classes
classes under the shed, you know. So those things are gone.
No, it's a modern campus. I think when when it's open and the Anguillan public is able to actually visit and see,
Yeah.
I think they will be pleased with the outcome. I have no doubt about that. Like I said, I'm not an architect. I can't speak to the size of the buildings, right? But when I go there, I'm in awe as well with regards to the size. If I visit Adrian T. Hazel, I'm in awe with regards to the size.
I can tell you one thing, and I'm not being facetious. I'm not joking. The teachers and the students gonna be fit, walking around. campus.
So I know that leads me right into.
You know where she was going. Go right ahead.
No. It's a gripe of mine that I see, and I do have to ask, because while I can appreciate that it is fit for purpose, what about accessibility?
Yeah.
These are not one-story buildings.
No.
No, they have elevators.
We have elevators and
They have
and
ramps.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And the yard pave, and it's you feel like you're on a university campus.
That's
The
the feeling.
blocks-
That's the feeling. I
The
get
blocks
from it
feel
as
like
well.
that. Like I honestly felt like I was back in school walking the house.
Okay.
Down to the very floor in use. Is like,
I get close to it every single day,
You
but
never-
I've never been. I get very
put on your
close to it.
sneakers and go on.
The funny
But
thing is, right? I told a teacher the other day, I feel so envious of you guys because you guys are gonna be teaching and working in this facility.
And you came through the grot. Sorry. All they had at the road school was probably like rocks.
Is that not our purpose to always make sure that we leave something better for those who are coming behind?
Listen, they ain't got no standpipe, so maybe our athletics and stuff gonna drop right to the floor because it's the pipe water that have the children running so strong.
That is so true. but we have a lot to be thankful for and grateful for.
We do.
In terms of where we are advancing, how we are making progress. I think the public should be pleased with.
we do.
And our children, I hope they recognize how grateful they should be for the facilities there.
I do have a question. We are speaking about the physical facilities that are there, and this is not to knock on anybody,
Excellent.
any
Excellent.
teachers.
Excellent.
But my question is, with the technology that we have and the availability for advancement, are our teachers equipped to be able to deliver what is needed?
Correct. And excellent. And I think if Mrs. Carter is listening to this, she said she will be clapping and saying, perfect question. Because this is something that is something that she repeats repeatedly. It's important to have the facilities, but what's equally important is what we are doing with the facilities, how they are utilized, and how prepared our teachers are to take full advantage of the facilities, and also how we deliver. Referring specifically to the teaching and learning process. What we are doing is, in addition to with help of our partners, OECS and the Joint Board of Teacher Education, the Caribbean developed a course on distributed learning and pedagogy, looking at teaching in varying environments and what the pedagogy look like, what the new understanding is, and how that should go about. OKPS teachers who are starting this new project, pilot, all of them will be trained in that in the summer months. And we are also having discussions. Well, OECS is having discussions with the Joint Board to extend that to all teachers throughout the Caribbean region. So the pedagogy is critical. The teaching and learning. Trust me, if we don't get teaching and learning right,
True.
we can build buildings from now until kingdom come. We're not going to get the outcomes that we want because it's not the buildings that are going to give you the outcomes.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
not to put a pin here, I say it openly, and I will say it again. I will look in the camera. I taught for a brief stint.
You taught me.
Hey, why did you do that? Why did you do that?
No,
I
but-
taught for. You taught both of us. Oh man, I taught for a brief stint out of high school, out of sixth form, and I often tell people I would never do it again. I tip my hat to the teachers. You have to have a special love.
Oh, yes.
An unction of the anointing and the Holy Spirit endowed with patience to teach. And I see teachers often, time and time again, taking out of their own pockets. Teachers' salaries in the summer don't go to any vacation. It go to buying stuff to put on the walls in their classroom. And the amount of teachers that have children in their classrooms that they feed on a daily basis, that they get books and all sorts of things for. It is a thankless job in the immediate stage, but they get a sense of pride. I think there's a special place in heaven for all teachers, granted. I'm not even trying to stroke anybody's ego, because I couldn't do it. I care for people. You know me, I care for people.
Right.
But I cannot put myself in that environment.
Day in, day out.
Day in, day out. And it's always thrust upon them to learn more, to try to better this, to try to better that.
Right.
So what I'm getting at is like, what's in place for teachers, not just from the education department perspective, but if you know of anything from government level that would say, hey, we know that you're going this way, we know that you have these challenges, you have these concerns. Who's listening to the concerns of the teachers? We have a rise in violence in the schools. COVID, the teachers have their children at home to deal with, but still was trying to teach online.
Correct.
And outside of the nurses, the premier alluded to this the other day as
Burnout.
well. The burnout, like, how is that being addressed? Because I don't think they've stopped. They've been, the children, I'm not downplaying what happened to our children, but the teachers were equally or even more impacted by those things. So I understand that we are looking ahead and trying to integrate great technologies. So if that happens again, we'll be ready. But immediately, what's being done to address this?
You recognize the running theme. It's the mental health, and
Right.
and being able to say we are now recognizing that the mental health of persons
Right.
is important.
Critically important.
Right. Okay. You sell a lot. Let me try to unpack it as best I can. Let me say this. I agree with you entirely on your assessment or your view. Or you did a good profile of our teachers. Okay. Let me put it that way. They are hardworking.
Sure.
They go way beyond the call of duty. There's no question about that. I am not going to argue with that. And they fill so many gaps in our system. The way we are responding to that is doing our best to say to them and for the Department of Education to be more responsive to that. Because I'm going to be honest with you, I was one of those teachers who used my salary, you know that too,
Of course.
to do everything.
Everything.
Right?
Can't buy gas, gotta walk to school the next day.
Right? What we've said to them with regards to some of the investments that they've been making, that really and truthfully are government investments. Let's put an end to that, right?
Okay.
So we standardize certain things, like the classroom colors and the painting classrooms to one color.
Okay.
So government can procure in bulk and provide the paint.
Lovely.
And what we've done over the last 2 years is also did the painting. So we said to teachers, step back.
Okay.
We're going to take care of that for you.
Yeah, I've painted a
right?
few classrooms.
There you go. Right? We've also communicated to principals and to SMTs for the various schools that we do a comprehensive resource list. I'm not saying it's not so that we can do our best to supply what teachers need
Right.
and reduce their dependence on putting their hand in their own pocket to get it. We've also taken that step a couple of years back. We are also encouraging teachers to communicate more with us, because the challenge that we have, a lot of times we really don't know how we can be of assistance.
Right. Okay.
And communicate more with us, and we've seen a lot of results with that. They come up and say, they will come to us and say, hey, Mr. Romap, things are challenging, I'm not doing well in a particular area, and we can direct assistance and support services where we can.
Right.
And we've had good outcomes where that is concerned.
Okay.
I want to touch on the mental health, because too often we ignore teachers in this regard, right? Because we feel at times that teachers don't require the type of support and assistance that everyone else needs. I don't know why we think teachers are superhumans.
Because they are.
But even superhumans need support.
I understand, but they're nurses, they're doctors, they're psychologists, they're cooks,
Right.
everything they are.
Right. They're everything to most persons. And you're absolutely correct. So what we've identified during the COVID situation, because we realize teachers are also mothers and sisters and children and so forth. They have challenges at home and they're dealing with their own issues. We provided some support pathways that were communicated to teachers that they can access, whether it's from psychosocial support or just forums of teachers, where teachers can come together and discuss issues or challenges, share ideas, and so forth.
Right.
We've done that. We've done that with local partners. We've also did that with regional partners. So some teachers would prefer to be part of a group that they don't know anyone.
Right.
And working with OECS and UNICEF, there were regional teaching discussion groups formed during COVID to offer support so teachers can just vent and talk about the challenges and share ideas and so forth. And
That's
no one needs to know
necessary.
who anyone.
That's
no one
necessary.
is. All of that was in place during this. We had local counselors and stuff that were available to support teachers and their families if they so request that support or desire that support. And we've had teachers who requested it and received support. When teachers request referrals for psychosocial support to professional counselors or psychologists, we facilitate as much as we can. So we do recognize we need to look at the overall well-being of our teachers. We've done a number of sessions on that, on managing stress during COVID, where all teachers were involved. We've done sessions on financial management. We've done sessions during COVID. We've done sessions on just coping in the professional arena during COVID for teachers. So we've done a lot to try to ensure we were given the information and support that teachers need
That's good.
to get through this difficult period. I hope I covered everything. Did I miss anything?
I think you did.
I think so. And
The violence one I want to deal with separately. I purposely didn't discuss that.
And we're gonna get into that when because we've now spoken about the well-being and the mental health of teachers, and we're gonna shift the focus a little bit more now onto the well-being and mental health of students. And when we get into violence, I think it covers both students and teachers. But we heard the premier when he was on the previous episode, and he gave us some stats that I think he said 1 in 5 students considered suicide at one point. Is this something that the department is cognizant of? What are you doing? How can we help? I think a lot of times we ask, what are you doing? What's going on? But we tend to take ourselves out of the equation. How can we help?
Right. Yeah. I'm going to say this, and I know for a number of Angolians it might be a little bit surprising, but suicide is an issue in our society. We've had multiple situations over the years where we had to deal with young persons who've contemplated suicide and also persons who attempted. And we thank God that they were not successful, right? The signs of students who are children or young persons who are struggling with suicide are very clear if we pay close attention. One of the things we are trying to encourage right now in our school system, and we've been doing this for years, this is nothing new, and trying to empower our counselors to do more and more one-on-one sessions with students. So we get to know our students, know what their challenges are, what their concerns are, and try to bring stuff out of them to talk more about it and let them see the support services as being there for them to help them get through these challenges. And we also we don't only do these one-on-one sessions, we also do group sessions because it's important. I think a lot of our students struggle with acceptance. And some of our young persons can be unkind. We need and parents need to understand, and this is where we're on what we can do. Parents need to understand that with their children they need to have conversations how we treat one another is important. Not everyone is alike. A simple statement can cause harm, social and mental harm to a child, right? A simple look, how you treat persons, and too often when we are young, we are not cognizant of how our actions impact other people. So what we do within schools is try our best to teach our children how to be kind and considerate of others, how to put yourself in another person's position, and try to understand that some of our actions are not welcomed and can be harmful and hurtful.
How is that going, though, if I can be honest? Because it's a struggle, and it's something that I've already told Leneva. I don't think that I can have that conversation because it can get to be very emotional for me and for everybody in the room. But that is the reality that we face, and it's painful and it's hurting because you have some children that can't even open their mouths to talk about it.
Yeah.
And they have no escape, and when a child is going to resort to wanting to end it all, we've reached a really low place in society.
Yeah.
And my eyes are here swelling up, and I don't intend to go on with this because you see it every day.
And on that, and you're absolutely right. These conversations are difficult, and I think sometimes that's why parents don't engage in those conversations with children. And I want to say this to parents because we also see at times a lot of resistance from parents to the children speaking with counselors. And that's a challenge. Sometimes it's the children that actually need that assistance. We get a lot of resistance from parents. I can give you a situation where a support service professional at the department reached out to a parent and told the parent in no uncertain terms, your child needs this additional support. And these are the concerns we've noticed. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 down the road. And the parent looked at it and said, no. And I said to the parent, I said, when I met with the parent, I said, okay, the support don't need to be provided via the school system. Okay? Now that we've raised this to you, are these concerns that you think are legitimate? No. I said, can I then encourage you? Can you seek advice external to the education system on how to address this matter? Because these concerns are real. We've witnessed them. We've observed the child. These things are there. Can you seek advice? And the parent looked at me and said, Mr. Romney, no one counseling my child. Okay? So the best we can do within the education system is continue to monitor the child and provide group and overarching support to make sure everything goes well. But the parents need to be cognizant that the world that our children are growing up in is not the same world that we grew up in.
Yeah.
Right? The challenges are a lot more intense. Different children respond differently to things within their environment. And we need to create an atmosphere where children can talk, where they can voice concerns, where you can't be telling a child, you don't need this, you don't need that. Especially when the child is reaching out and showing you through different actions that they do need assistance, right? Sorry, I'm going on.
No, I want you to go on, and I'm taking this in as a parent, as someone who walks with children, and sometimes it's hard as a parent to hear you're not doing a good job, because that is sometimes how it's internalized.
Right. I'm glad you said that. That's how it's internalized, because that's not
what it means.
Challenges a child is having is not
a reflection of
the
right,
job the
but
parent
it is
doing.
sometimes internalized that
Right.
you are saying
Right.
that I, the parent, am doing a bad job.
Correct.
And that's not necessarily what it means. It just
No,
means that this
no.
child
And
needs additional.
And we communicate that to parents. We do our best to communicate that to
So
parents.
I have a question, and I brought this question up to Dr. Webster, and I know this sits with our legislators and not necessarily with the department, but the department can agitate for certain things. These are some of the things that we're going to get into next week. But legislation surrounding mental health, and what authority does the school have to step in when a parent is essentially, at which point do we recognize that mental health is as important as physical health. And if we were to see a child being physically harmed, the system will step in.
Correct. And we have the legislative framework for that.
To do so. But now we are saying that we are seeing children who need the mental health support, but we don't have the ability to step in and say, I can override the parent to ensure that this child is overall healthy. So is that something, given, you know, the resistance that you've seen, is that something that have been discussed? Is it something that's in the works to ensure that the same way that we would react if it was something physical, that we can do something about it when it becomes mental health?
I think we do have the legislative, we do have some, we do have a legislative framework to provide mental support, right? I do believe an independent mental health bill is needed in Anguilla. Right, it has its place and its function, and I do hope and pray that government moves in that direction. But within the social development sector, we do have the legislative elements to provide support. The Department of Education is very limited, though, because there's a clause in the Education Act that states the wishes of a parent with regards to the education of the child should be respected.
I get all that. I'm sitting here and I'm quiet, right?
Right.
Because you know how I can get.
Yeah.
I get all that.
Right.
But in the same breath, these children spend 8 hours of their day under the care and supervision of the overarching umbrella that is the education department. I was a latchkey child. For those of you that don't know what it is, Mr. Bernard Watley taught me this in social studies. And I understood the definition of a latchkey child. We have more latchkey children in our society today because tourism continues to take our parents out of the home before the child gets up. The children get up, get themselves ready to school, go to school, extracurricular activities, take care of themselves, come home,
take care of their siblings.
Take care of their siblings, do everything else.
Yes.
And the parent comes home. Now, I'm not done crying the tourism industry, but I'm saying we have all these limiting factors and hurdles that puts us in a very precarious position, in a very unique position. Are you trying to tell me that with the pressures that the education system has to go through, with the pressures that a teacher have to go through, you are trying to tell me as a parent, and if any parent who there is offended, well, you can pick it up with me elsewhere. You are trying to tell me that the education department, not one person in the department, counselors, teachers, everybody would have identified something in your child. And you're going to say no? And when this child becomes a burden to society, you're quick to wash your hand?
Yeah. I want to add to that, though. In extreme cases, there are protocols and policies in place and legislative framework to address those. The Department of Education will not have the authority to compel, but we can work with our partners, the Department of Social Development and through the court system, where we think situations rise to a certain level that intervention is necessary, especially if we think the well-being of the child is at play. We can intervene. We do have those protocols and that authority to intervene, working in concert with our partners. We do have it. It's there, but it's really in situations where we can see an immediate harm, threat
so
to the well-being
we
of the
throw
child.
out the idea that an ounce of prevention is
Better than
a pound of cure.
Yeah.
And so it's unfortunate that it has to get to those extreme levels.
Yeah. We have to see
before
if
something
there's
an intervention.
Yeah.
I would like to see that intervention being.
It can be in the initial phases if we can identify the threat or the harm or the potential harm.
But how do we measure the levels of the threat? Because then again, for me, we're dancing, and this is no offense to present company, but you know how I feel about these issues. We're dancing with the devil on a lot of things here in Anguilla, especially where youth development and education, our children is concerned. Thank God we don't have to go through some of what we see externally, we see on the news.
Yeah.
But that's the stark reality. There's drugs in the schools. There's drugs on the school buses. There's weapons on the school buses and in the schools.
Yes.
So what are we saying? What are we saying if we don't want to attack this thing head on? We get up on the radio, we get up on TV, we get up in our churches, we get up everywhere, and we say everything else other than dealing with what's in front of us. And our youth is at stake. And if our youth is at stake, our nation is at stake. How much longer? How much longer? And I didn't want to get here because
Ivan warned me before this show.
I told them if I don't want to go here.
And usually I am the one that, but I realize that when you're dealing with two passionate people in the room, that one has to be, you know, and
Yeah.
I share your sentiments, Ivan.
Yeah.
I share them. Again, we're parents. We're all parents in here. I think we're all parents of children the same age in here. And so our concern as parents, as community persons, in your professional capacity as a chief education officer, again, I'm going to ask, what do we do? Because it cannot be a single fix. That is, if
No, it's
anything
not.
is clear to me, is that we cannot expect, and I'm just gonna have to say this, we cannot expect that we're going to heap this on the education department and teachers.
No.
Correct.
We all have a part to play. And when we speak about, as parents, how we speak to our children, I'm literally going to, for those of you who are going to watch this eventually, do you wake up in the morning and tell your children that you love them? Do you drop your children off and tell them, have a great day, I love you? You pick them up from school, how was school? Did you have a good day? What did you do? Who did you interact with?
Yeah.
And when you put them to bed at night, I love you. Those 3 words, and I've done sessions with students, and you'd be surprised how many parents, and how many students I should say, they say that they don't get that from their parents on a regular basis. It starts at home, it starts within our community, and when we speak about how we speak to our children and what our children are taking in, when we listen to a lot of the vitriol that is spewed within our communities, that it's spewed on our airwaves, and I'm going to have to say it. We cannot expect our children to soak up that vitriol and then push out something positive. What we put out is directly related to what we put in.
What we sow is what we're going to reap, and that's what the situation that we're dealing with right now in the country. You got a lot to unpack again. Let me start. I want to impress on the public, because this is a report, right? A progress report. We are not waking up to any nightmare situations on radio, on Facebook, concerning violence or bad conduct by students, right? Like some countries are currently doing. We are at a transition point where if we don't get our policies right, if we don't get the level of community engagement right, if we don't reach our children and do so quickly, that we could be waking up to those scenarios. And I'm not trying to scare anyone. I'm just being very direct. If persons been following press releases on violence in schools from the Department of Education, we've been addressing these issues and been communicating with parents and telling the public the actions we are taking. You mentioned the school bus situation. We got so concerned about the school buses and the level of violence that were occurring on those school buses and persons walking with weapons and the inability of bus drivers to monitor while they were driving, that we had to put security guard on buses.
And nobody would think that that's a problem. We either see security guards on jail buses with wardens,
Correct.
not with children.
Right.
And I'm gonna
We had to do it because it was the quickest immediate response to the safety of all persons on that buses, and we had to do it. Our intent is to replace those security guards with bus wardens, right? And we are hoping to get there shortly. But we had to address the conduct of students on school buses, right? Because you'll have quarrels and fights breaking out, and the bus driver is driving and focusing on the road, and he will talk and they won't listen. So we had to provide that assistance to bus drivers in an immediate way, just to prevent anything from happening that we will later regret, and to ensure the safety of all children using the bus service. The situation with weapons, students taking weapons to school, is grave. It's alarming, right? This school year in particular, the frequency at which we intercepted, and when I say we, I'm referring to the security staff at the school, intercepted weapons, are discovered or were able to locate weapons hidden on the school ground and turn them over to the Royal Angola Police Force. It's alarming.
Teacher Brennan.
Right? The frequency of fights with students on their way to school, on their way from school, fights during the school day, it's alarming. We had to also increase security guards to do perimeter patrols of the school to ensure that areas where teachers or custodians or the security officers by those can't see, that we had security officers moving around the campuses on an ongoing basis to prevent arms thing. What I want to say to the public is, and what we are recognizing too, is that our students, what is coming into the school environment is stuff that's happening in the community. It's not stuff that's originating from the school for the most part. It's stuff that is present in our community, and they're bringing it. A lot of our students are fearful.
Yeah.
It's gang related. They are fearful of their peers. And they're not bringing weapons to really use it. They're bringing weapons for protection, right? They are so fearful that they feel they need that added protection. Although the school itself is very secure. Right? Our schools are secure for the most. Our schools are, I can say that confidently.
Yeah.
Our schools are secure, and the evidence we point that out. The challenge is, how do we communicate that to students, our children, our young people who are fearful of gangs, fearful of their peers because of their association with gangs, are fearful because of the community they're coming from, or threats that were made to them, right? And this is something that we are working very closely with PAVE, Partners Advocating for Violence Eradication, that's chaired by Hyacinth Bradley, and the Royal Angola Police Force. And right now we are working on a joint initiative with the Commissioner of Police to actually provide support to families where these children are coming from.
So one of the things I don't want us to overlook, because if you say it here, they might think it's just speculation when they hear it on the road. But the drugs in the schools,
Yes.
the pills, and these things don't make here. So these things are getting here somehow.
Right.
And it's not children, 12 to 13-year-old, without IDs, going to pick up these things wherever they're getting them from.
I want to just stop and reiterate something that you said. Because I think when we speak about drugs, a lot of times you think marijuana.
Yeah.
Right? And marijuana has been around, and marijuana has been around a long time.
Yeah.
But I think we need to expound on what types of drugs we're talking about. You said pills.
Yeah.
We are looking at ecstasy,
Molly, whatever.
Molly. I know some of them abuse Adderall, and
I don't even know what that is.
Adderall is an ADHD medication that
So it
they
just
give
gets
that
you
they
high.
give that they
So,
give
you know?
students. I mean, persons who are hyper.
Hyper,
So it mellows them out. So they're abusing Adderall.
Wow.
So yes, you have the prescription medications. You have those other pills that are out there and are being used and abused by our students. And I think it's important that we point out when we speak about drugs that we clarify exactly what we're talking about.
Right.
So that we don't just think, oh, well, somebody rolling up a spliff.
And I just want to add one drug to your list that you didn't mention, alcohol. Okay, that's a common one as well.
They're drinking in school.
Well, they're drinking prior, and well, getting it into school is a challenge because of the security of the
Right.
school.
But if you're coming to school drunk.
But you
They come into school drunk.
you can smell it on their breath, and we do have a few students. We have a number of students that we can comfortably call having an alcohol problem, right? So don't underestimate alcohol and our children.
I can't take it.
Right. That's another one. I want to say this to parents, right? With all these challenges, parenting is a proactive engagement. You mentioned earlier about, and very passionately, and for someone who I can say to their children on a regular basis, I love you.
Yeah.
Right. I don't do that. Sorry, I say I don't do that. Lord, I hope my daughter wasn't listening to that one.
Miami Michelle close your ears.
I do that all the time. I do it all the time. And myself and my wife, we do that all the time, repeatedly. This morning, I was taking a shower when my daughter left, right? And it really touched me. She didn't get to say goodbye to me, I love you. And while I was in the shower, I heard my phone, the sound of a WhatsApp coming in. It sounds like a door knocking, right? That's the sound I have for WhatsApp. And the vehicle was driving out of the yard. So when I got out of the shower and I drove it, I usually go to the phone in the morning early because usually it's used with schools that I need to address. So I pick up the phone and look at it, and a simple message: Dad, I'm leaving. Love you. Have a good day. Right? You need to parents need to cultivate that culture with their children. Okay, it's so critical. It tells them you care about them, you're concerned about their plight, you're concerned about how they're doing, and they're going to reflect it back to you.
Of course.
Right? And and that's a way in to every other conversation you want to have them. How was your day? How do things? Any challenges? What are you concerned about? How is school? You have no homework, everything. But you have to cultivate the environment that allows for that engagement. Our children don't have parental support. So a number of them, the children that we are concerned about, that small 5% of children that are having these challenges with weapons and stuff, parental engagement is non-existent. Right? And this is the challenge we're having. And this is why we are looking at support to families. How do we reach out to these families with these children and support them? And I don't want to alarm the public, because don't get the impression that at the Albion Lake Arch Comprehensive School we have 90% of our students with challenges like this. No, it's a small number. It's a very small number. But the frequency at which we have to deal with matters involving that small percentage of students is alarming.
And that, for me, they're crying out. Like,
Yeah.
they're crying out. I saw a meme and my daughter was laughing at it. I posted it on my WhatsApp. It had a baby, and it says, the baby was saying, the words above the baby was saying, my foot is itching me, but my mother gave me a bottle. You know, like the baby is crying out.
Yeah.
It's not all the time that they're crying out because they want to be fed,
Right.
comforted,
Right.
and you
Right.
don't know these things.
Right.
And nothing changes where that is concerned.
Right.
Children are crying out. I spent a lot of time by the juvenile center
Correct.
in Wasnot, and these guys who are out now, out of jail or whatever, they don't pass me any place.
Right.
You understand? But it's just because you went and you had a simple conversation with them. You let them know that they have potential,
Right.
and you believe in them.
Right.
I had one guy. He told me, I asked him how he ended up there. He told me he used to get beat so bad at home. When he go to school, he just had to find somewhere, somebody to take it out.
Right.
So he was fighting constantly in class.
Right.
There's always something that leads
reason.
to the behavior that we are seeing.
Right.
As a community, as church, as politicians, as teachers, as counselors, as gardeners, plumbers, whatever it is, Anguilla is too small. Too small for us to be having to go through these issues. Some children, if you take your plumber, a child may be having difficulty in school. Children don't learn the same way, and everybody is not academically inclined.
Correct.
Put them in front of a computer, they gone down the road. Put them behind of a camera, they gone down the road.
And our system of education acknowledges that students come to the table with different abilities and different interests, and that our job is to meet them where they're at.
That's all we're asking.
And that's something that we do our best within the resources that we have to try to accomplish, and parents have to view it in that same light, right? Education is a partnership. When I went back to the Department of Education, the position as CEO, I had thoughtful design a thing, because I wanted to communicate on my first day what my approach to education is, what my philosophy is around, right? And it's about partnerships, right? And there's a graphic that was on education Facebook page for a while. It has since been taken down and replaced by another graphic, but it was designed by Thoughtful to demonstrate the level of partnership between the home and the school and teachers and community that must exist for a successful education system. It's the same thing that Mrs. Carter tried to communicate repeatedly when she talked to parents and members in the community. What we are seeing at the Albina Lake Arch Comprehensive School is a reflection of our community.
Yeah.
If we want to solve the issues at the Albina Lake Arch Comprehensive School, we must continue to do what we are doing well and be innovative and look at new strategies and so forth. But we have to also deal with the community, right? If we don't address the issues in our community, we will forever be dealing with those issues in our schools, right? And parents need to understand they are the bedrock of the education system. Parenting is a proactive, full engagement enterprise. It is not something with hands off. I've sat in meetings with too many parents who tell me, Mr. Romney, I can't deal with him. I got to deal with him. Right? I had a meeting with a parent where I had to actually send the child outside and say to that parent, don't ever do that again. Because what you're actually saying to that child when you say you can't, you give up, you're on your own, you do whatever you want. You cannot deal with your own child. Yes, you can. Tell me you don't have the strategies, you don't have the know-how. Tell me you need help in that. But don't tell me in front of your child you cannot deal with that child. You cannot address the issues with that child. I had to take a difficult decision of separating 3 children last year from their. I don't want to expel them because I'm thankful to God I didn't expel, because that was an option. I say, well, I'm thankful to God. Not that I didn't want to use expulsion, but it's terminal, right? And if you look at some of those children that we had to separate and put them in alternative education paths, I'm happy we did that. Because in one child in particular, the child got 7 CXC subjects in the alternative path.
Teacher Brent, I know we're way out of time. And I just got to share this story. Yeah. You and I both know an individual that came up under me, went to our church.
Yes.
And environment is critical. As critical as the support system and those things that are under God.
Right.
We know this child was here fighting teachers, getting involved with the wars. Left from here, went to St. Thomas. Graduate, top of your class.
Yeah.
I don't know what kind of scientist he is now with the U.S. Army, but he is like way up there. Yeah. Way up there. So to say you're giving up on a child, no. And I appreciate the fact that you didn't take that road.
You should never give up on children, on young persons, right? And this is what I'm trying to communicate with parents. Don't say that. The situation might look hopeless. It doesn't mean it's hopeless. It looked that way.
Change your approach.
Change your approach. Find out what the solution. Talk to us. One of the things we are doing right now in the Ministry of Social Development and Education is launching a family support program called Family Force, where we are hoping to provide parents with those techniques, those strategies on how to deal with challenges in the home. And it's going to cover
you gave me the new episode look.
Yes, we have this sort of thing between us. Go. That's coming up.
That's coming up.
Take note. But I think, in all of this conversation, and this has been a heavy conversation, and I think it is a good precursor to what we are going to be going into. But my biggest takeaway from this was, and I'm hoping this is what you're saying, is that the education department has taken an approach of no child left behind.
Correct.
Because you said, while it's not the majority of students, it might only be 5% of the students.
Right.
Those 5%, they still matter.
They still matter to us, and we're not going to give up on them.
And so, I know we are well above and over time, Mr. Romney. This is only the beginning, because I know before we started, indicated that we're going to touch on some other topics and
And we
we did
haven't,
not get there.
Right.
So we're definitely going to have you back. I just want to say thank you for coming on here to Progress Report. I know me and Ivan, our passionate side came out today, and it's clear that we
That's
are
a good
concerned.
thing. That's not a bad thing. We make it sound like it's a bad thing.
You know, sometimes persons make it feel as if it's a bad thing.
No.
But our concern for our children and the direction of this country is genuine and it's real. And to be able to engage in the conversations surrounding them and wanting to move in a direction that we can do best by all of our children. I think that is something that I think all of us sitting here
Yeah.
that we feel very strongly about. So again, thank you for coming on Progress Report. We look forward to having you back
Pretty soon.
soon.
No problem.
And I will let Ivan take us out.
Thank you. For those of you who heard a little bit of passion in my voice, it wasn't anger. It was just that this is something that's very close to me. It's for that reason why I said I wouldn't teach again. Not the fact that you have to invest, but you bear the scars of these children that you come into contact with.
Yeah.
And it's painful. Anybody that knows me knows if I go right for you, I go right for you to the ground. And before I go another way, thank you for tuning in. We have a few very deep and hard episodes coming up. I'll tell you that from now, because the area of mental health, and not just in the adults but in our children, is something that we have to meet head on.
Right.
I long for the day when we can see a lot of these issues addressed. When I was going to school, the biggest fight that we had in high school at that point in time wasn't with no knife and no gun. I can remember it to this day. They jucked one of the stalks. So you remember how that tree behind the bathroom there, one of those palm trees that one of them I
Right,
see I
yes,
can
correct,
slap it.
correct.
That was wrestling for me. That was the biggest of fight that I saw in some rocks.
Yeah.
And our children have to be concerned about guns and knives. We're going the wrong direction. Let's pull up the handbrake.
Yes.
Let's find the direction that we need to go.
Right.
And it's been said over and over here on this show today, and I'm going to say it again in closing. It requires all of us, parents, siblings, cousins, uncles,
Correct.
aunties, sisters, brothers, everybody's connected. I often say in Anguilla, we're interrelated, interconnected, and we're mutually vulnerable, and we have to address this together.
Correct.
On that note, thank you for tuning into Progress Report.